Hi. The Flamingos is a group or a flamboyance of friends who love to write and love to critique. The best part is sometimes some of us disagree and sometimes we agree because we all bring our own perspective to a reading and to a question. In this podcast series, we share our perspectives on writing through questions we receive at flamingoswritenow@gmail.com. Hi, again, my name is Melanie McDonald, and I'm a retired criminal defense attorney, and I write mystery thrillers about women who kill and the men who drive them to it. Wendy?
Thanks, Melanie. I'm Wendy Kendall. I write cozy mysteries. My first book, Cat Out of the Bag, is published and available, and I'm in the midst of writing the sequel.
Hi, I'm Avis Adams, and I'm an English instructor, and I write young adult novels, and I have one book of poetry, Quill Scene, which was published in 2019 by Finishing Line Press, and a YA novel with a publishing editor. Carl.
Hi, my name is Carl Lee, and I write paranormal fantasy. My book, Selfies, is currently under consideration by a publisher. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Brown. I'm a writer of published and award-winning short stories and flash fiction, and I'm working on a YA novel. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you, Catherine. Our subject today is, are you a plotter or a pantser? I think that's a great question because it goes to how you process. First, what is a plotter? A plotter is an author who plans and outlines the entire book before beginning to write. A pantser? An author who just has an idea and sits down to the page or the computer and writes. There is absolutely no right or wrong way to create. Everyone's process is different. However, it's good to know your process so you can trust that it's the best way for you to proceed. Okay, you have a great idea for a story. You've done the research. Where to begin? I believe that being a plotter has definite advantages because in the long run, it saves time and energy. You don't have to go back and restructure when the ending of the novel changes or the characters begin to get out of control. That being said, I am a verified pantser. I get an idea for a story and start writing. Often, I don't know the ending until the second or even the third draft. Why? Because when I write, the creative process itself brings the story to life. I put the characters in a dire situation and see how they react. Do they look for safety or do they take risks? Do they want to save the world or do they want to get rich quick? They don't fit the plot fits them. When I know the characters, what they want versus what they need, then I know their story. How about you, Wendy? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a hybrid. I try to take advantage of the strengths of each method. I like to start with an outline of the plot that also includes a sketch of the characters' journeys. And since I write mysteries, I want to know the ending and clues that solve the mystery before I get too far. I outline all this, not in great detail, but in sort of a helpful map that I can refer to. My outline is most effective for me when it's visual. I use whiteboards that also include arrows and post-it notes and a timeline. But none of my outline is in permanent ink. I can make changes later as I write if the story is taking another path. I use my helpful outline to start writing scenes. I'm not necessarily writing scenes in order from chapter 1 to the end. I don't have to because I have an outline. So I can write scenes in any order and still stay on track with the storyline. That gives me an advantage when I'm having trouble writing a particular scene. I can temporarily skip to another scene I'd rather write at that point. Later, I can go back and write that troublesome scene when I'm creatively ready to tackle it. Since my outline is not in great detail, my scenes develop as I write. Although it sounds funny to some people, sometimes my characters have a will of their own and dictate their own actions or emotions that can be different from my original outline. Since my outline is general, there's room for my characters or their scenes to expand as they wish. But that's not to say that I allow scenes to ramble. It's important that a writer have a purpose for every scene and that the purpose is achieved. What's very interesting is that the author's purpose may or may not be the same as the character's purposes in a scene. That's when an outline can be very helpful in order to do some tracking of motives and clues and where characters are at specific times in the story. All these factors are especially important when writing a mystery. And there's an advantage planting clues when you already know the ending. Just as the scenes can develop as I write them, so can my general outline. Sometimes I'm adding to my outline as ideas come up, and sometimes I'm changing it. It's all a fluid hybrid. Also, if you're a series writer, since my cozy mystery, Cat Out of the Bag, Cat with a K, is the first of the In Pursuit mysteries, I have an overview outline a few books out. So I have a general map of where the books are headed. As they say, if you don't know where you're headed, how will you know when you get there? Avis, how about you?
Thanks, Wendy, and Melanie, you too. I'd have to say I'm a plotter, but I agree with both my colleagues. The plot and outline are loose and change as characters are developed. So what I like to do with any story I write is to mull the idea over before I write anything down. I think of how I want to approach the topic and what has to happen. I've used The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogel and plotted a story using the 12 stages of the hero's journey, and I've used Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and using her templates plotted out the important scenes. Or, if my novel is complete, at least double checked to see that all the important elements of plot and story are there. And just a reminder, plot is what happens in your story, and story is the short time period you're focusing on, whether it's a week, a day, or a year in the life of your hero. I've also created a storyboard, which is a visual outline, kind of like what Wendy was talking about with her whiteboard and different things. I've created a storyboard using the hero's journey and was actually surprised at what was revealed in the images, like a winding road that was their journey, and it was their actual journey. So they were on a hero's journey. And a red book of poetry that was well loved and then was lost, but then was found again. And that became really significant to the story. So a storyboard is a drawing of all the important scenes in little boxes like a comic strip. And I used stick figures and basic trees and houses and mountains. I'm not an artist, but the process revealed some important info about the story that I hadn't realized. So just remember that whether you plot or pants, you will go through multiple drafts, sometimes 17 or more. So finish the novel, then revise, revise, revise. Right, Carl? I know you have notes on this question.
Right, Avis. Revise, revise, revise. I'm currently revising. I'm on my 8th time, so apparently I only have 9 more times to revise selfies. I love this question because this question gets asked a lot at writers' conferences and classes and workshops, but I've never seen pantser versus plotter as a binary choice. Wendy, you called yourself a hybrid. Avis talks about plotting her story out and then it morphs. I think more plotter versus pantser as more of a continuum from point A to point B, minus X to X. And I'm very proud to say that I'm a little on the pantser side of center. Wherever you fit on the spectrum, or if you're actually one of the people who said at either of the polls, you're able to write your story because you are the only one qualified to do it. I do create a roadmap like we've discussed. I know the starting point for my book and I know where I want it to end. And I may know 5 or 6 of the key points that Jessica Brody mentions in Save the Cat Writes a Novel or in Christopher Vogler's Writer's Journey, but I may not know all of those scenes when I sit down to write. And I don't need the roadmap to be complete to be able to jump around. I write the scenes as they present themselves to me, what I feel like doing. Usually if I'm stuck, that means I'm trying to write the wrong scene at that time. So I skip ahead, skip back, wherever the scene tells me I need to write. How about you, Catherine?
If I were to look at your plotter to pantser scale, I'd have to put myself at about 15, with 0 being all plotter and 100 being all pantser. So I'm much more of a plotter than a pantser. Although that's developed over time for me as I've gotten better at writing, because when I started, I didn't know any better. So I started out as more of a pantser with a general idea for the novel that I just started writing. And then it stalled because I only had a hazy idea of where the story was going and how it was going to end. And since I didn't have any direction, I didn't make any progress. I'm a slow writer anyway because I edit as I draft, but the pantser problem shelved my work. So back to my pantser dilemma, I tried a different novel. In that one, I actually had an ending, but I had very little idea of what happens in Act 2 and Act 3, and so I fumbled with what to do with that novel. I was a little less interested in it, so I went back to the first novel with fresh eyes and better tools, like The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler and Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel. But the tool that really saved my novel by helping me sort out my plot was K.M. Weiland's Creating Character Arcs, because it helped me tie my characters to my plot. So I spent a marathon weekend plotting out my novel and solidifying the plot points and the character arcs. Now I know what scenes I need based on what the characters need to do to get to the logical end of the story. So my advice is pay attention to your process. I should have had a clue that I might be a plotter because I have always known that I cannot write a scene until I know the point of the scene and exactly what happens in it, down to minute detail. So I plot it in my head first and then I write it down. I've taken writing classes that included free write periods to just write some scene or part of a scene, such as write the scene where your character's having dinner with others in the story. What are they eating? My response is, really? I have no idea. What part of the novel? What happened right before that? Who's in the scene and why? I'm going to have to think about that for about an hour before I commit words to the page. If that's you too, you may be more of a plotter. If the free write is your dream, you may be a pantser. I have really loved this discussion today and listening to everyone's process. I hope it sheds some light on how to figure out your own writing style. Hang on here a second. Sorry about that, folks. Thanks for a great session on Are You a Plotter or Are You a Pantser? And thank you, fellow writers, for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our podcast and learning something that you can take away with you to help you in your writing journey. Please send us your questions about writing to flamingoswritenow@gmail.com. No caps, no spaces, and you might hear our responses to your question on our next Flamingos Write Now podcast. Join us next time when Flamingos Write Now will answer the question, how do you handle description?
Yay.